This is just for the sake of you guys, and I let you live with David. Please put David first. What exactly do you mean by that? It means from now on, all the kindergarten drop-offs and preparations should be done by Mike and you. Grandchildren are treasures, right? Emily, the wife of our only son Robert, said with a sarcastic smile. Is this her true nature? I feel more sad than angry. We were proposed to live together by Robert and started living with Robert's family 3 months ago. Living with our grandson David was a joy, but taking our silence for granted, Emily started neglecting her chores and almost stopped taking care of her own child. When we finally addressed it, those were her words. Unable to say anything, my husband Mike, who had overheard our conversation from the next room, came over. If that's how it is, we'll just do as you say. Since we're living together, after all. Mike signaled to me with his eyes. Yes, we will take care of David then. At our response, Emily, looking satisfied, went back to her room. If Emily intends to be that way, we need to respond accordingly. I nodded at Mike's words. My name is Amanda. Robert had left home to get married 6 years ago. So now, it was just Mike and I living together. Mike is 55 years old. He was a middle school teacher but fell ill due to the stress 2 years ago. The kids are already grown up, and we have some savings. We'll manage on my part-time job for a while, so don't worry. I convinced Mike, who had worked hard for the family, to take an early retirement, almost forcing him to. Half a year after quitting his job, Mike's health improved significantly. Maybe I should get a part-time job at a tutoring center. Having been a teacher for over 30 years, Mike continued to engage with children he loves by working part-time at a tutoring center, without overdoing it. Mike is now very lively. This experience made us deeply realize how happy it is to be both physically and mentally healthy. Our current life is ordinary, but we are very satisfied, being able to afford some leisure in our hearts. David, you'll be in first grade next year. Have you bought a new bag yet? Our life took a dramatic turn the day after Mike and I had such a conversation, triggered by a phone call from Robert. Robert lived about a 30-minute drive from us with his wife Emily and their 5-year-old son David. Though we often reached out to see our grandson, it was rare for them to contact us. But then, Robert made an unusual call. It's rare to hear from you. How are you three? Did you buy David a new bag yet? I couldn't help but bombard him with questions. No, not yet. It's about time, isn't it? If you and Emily are okay with it, we'd like to give it as a gift for his school entrance. That would be a great help, Mom. Robert's voice brightened for a moment, but then there was a pause. What's wrong? Well, I actually wanted to ask if we could live with you at your house. Live with you, SR? I was at a loss for words. Robert apologetically explained that his family was currently facing financial uncertainties. As David grows, expenses will increase, right? Emily and I discussed that we should start saving now. So, Emily is also hoping to live together? That was surprising to me. Emily had quit her job when she got pregnant with David and had been a housewife ever since. Although Robert chose her and she's not a bad person, I've always felt a barrier and couldn't quite get a grasp on Emily. Normally, one would resist living with their in-laws. Emily is positive about it. In fact, she was the one who suggested we live together. I was utterly surprised by Robert's words, but there's nothing happier than being able to always be with David. I immediately agreed. Is this my home from today? Yes, let's live together. Yay! A month later, Robert's family moved into our house. David brightened our home. Emily, hangers go here, and spare detergent is stored here. I showed Emily around. Amanda, thank you. Thank you too, for suggesting we live together. Though I still feel a barrier, I actively try to engage with Emily to build a good relationship. Emily was quiet at first. I did the cooking, but Emily willingly took care of the other chores and shopping. Emily seemed like such a good person. It's no wonder Robert fell for her. Living together, I finally started to feel positive about Emily. However, her true colors began to show gradually. Your cooking is so bland, always vegetables, very plain, isn't it? Emily, who is picky about food, started to complain about my cooking. Sorry. As we get older, we tend to prefer lighter food. But I make sure it's nutritious and healthy. Ever since Mike fell ill, I've studied nutrition and been extra careful with our meals. It might be a bit bland for younger people, but I'm proud it's healthy. Emily started to complain about other things too. Amanda, I don't want my clothes folded because they get wrinkled. Could you leave them on hangers instead? Then you should do it yourself. As Emily became increasingly presumptuous, even Robert started to admonish her. But far from being repentant, Emily became more defiant. In this day and age, you should be grateful just to have someone live with you. Hearing this, both Mike and I felt upset, but considering the ongoing living situation, we kept silent. Taking our silence as consent, Emily became more unbridled. Initially, she took care of David's kindergarten drop-offs and preparations, but gradually, even that seemed too much for her. David, what about kindergarten? Mom said I could take the day off today. Let's play, Grandma. She started letting David skip kindergarten whenever she didn't feel like preparing. A housewife, yet not even taking care of her own child. I was truly astonished. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. Today you're going to kindergarten. Oh? What about lunch? That morning, I realized Emily hadn't prepared lunch. A bad feeling washed over me, and when I checked David's kindergarten bag, I found only a small bread bought from the grocery store. Sending a kindergartner with just a small bread for lunch. I couldn't stay silent this time. Emily, this is too much. As a housewife, you should at least prepare something more nutritious for him. But Emily threw unbelievable words back at me. You and Mike aren't working long hours, are you? You have plenty of time. I'm doing you a favor by letting you live with David. Please put David first. What do you mean by that? From now on, you and Mike should take care of all the drop-offs and lunch preparations. David is a treasure, isn't he? Emily said, smirking sarcastically. Is this her true nature? I felt sad beyond anger. Unable to say anything, my husband Mike, who had overheard our conversation from the next room, came over. If Emily says so, then we'll just do as she says. Since we're living together, after all. Mike signaled to me with his eyes. Yes, we'll take care of David ourselves. At our response, Emily, looking satisfied, went back to her room. After a while, Emily left the house dressed up, all by herself. If Emily intends to be that way, we need to respond accordingly. I nodded at Mike's words. That evening, Robert came back after Emily and David had gone to bed. I hate to bother you when you're tired, but... We reported today's events to Robert. I'm really sorry. I'll talk to her. Robert, already exhausted from work, had even more to worry about. We couldn't trouble Robert, who was working hard for his family, any further, and we couldn't let Emily do as she pleased if we were going to live together. We have a good idea. Would you let us handle it? I said, patting the worried-looking Robert on the shoulder with a smile. Then, we prioritized taking care of David as Emily had demanded. I took over preparing David's lunch. Mike was in charge of kindergarten drop-offs and pickups. With us taking care of her child, Emily started waking up only after David had left for kindergarten and often disappeared somewhere, dressed up, during the day. Sometimes, she would spend the whole day in pajamas, lazily using her mobile phone at home. Honestly, Emily's behavior was nothing but a nuisance, but Mike and I had decided not to say anything to her. Then, taking our silence as consent, Emily's selfishness escalated even further. One day, Emily hadn't returned home by the time David was supposed to go to bed.
Where did Mom go?
It's late, isn't it? Let me try contacting her. Worried, we decided to call Emily. Hello? Emily's carefree voice came through the phone.
Hey, where are you?
If you're going to be late, you should at least let us know. Then, she responded with something we hadn't expected. I forgot to tell you, but I'm at a hotel in Monterey right now.
A hotel in Monterey?
Yes. I'll be back by tomorrow evening, so please take care of David for me. The call was abruptly ended. We hadn't heard anything about a trip. Mike and I exchanged looks and sighed.
Where is she?
David looked anxious. She said she has some errands and can't come home today.
David, let's sleep together tonight. How about we read the quiz book we borrowed from the library the other day?
Yeah. Mike skillfully distracted David and took him to the bedroom. Just then, Robert came home.
Did you know Emily went on a trip?
Robert frowned.
A trip? What are you talking about? Where did she get the money for that?
Robert sighed deeply.
I'll have to talk to her properly.
Don't worry, we plan to make Emily take full responsibility. We're looking after David, so don't worry. It seemed like Robert sensed we had a plan. All right. Robert reluctantly agreed.
But from now on, you should manage the household finances. Don't give Emily any money except for an allowance.
Until now, Robert had been giving his entire salary to Emily, who managed the household finances. So he had no idea how much was being spent or saved. But that had allowed Emily to do whatever she wanted. Following our advice, from the next month, Robert only gave Emily an allowance of $200, and nothing more, strictly adhering to this rule.
$200 isn't enough for anything.
Emily protested vehemently. I think that's enough. When Robert said that, Emily fell silent.
The people next door have brand name bags, and we have.
Initially, Emily complained every time she saw Robert, but after Robert spoke harshly to her, she stopped complaining.
You're not doing household chores or taking care of the children, so you should work.
Emily vented her frustration on Mike and me.
So it's because you always make vegetable dishes that aren't tasty.
Ah, here we go again, so annoying. Despite Emily still complaining about my cooking, we didn't back down.
David says he loves it, though. Yeah. I love Grandma's food.
Nice, David.
Sorry, but we're prioritizing David.
We skillfully used Emily's own words, think of the grandchildren first, to quietly retaliate.
It's so loud in the morning.
One morning, Emily came out of her room, looking angry.
We thought of making a swing for David. Thanks to being able to spend time with my grandson, I've found a new hobby.
Thank you, Emily. No sooner had I spoken than the sound of a hammer hitting wood echoed throughout the house. Emily grimaced, but seeing David's eyes light up next to Mike, she couldn't say anything more. Also, Mike started doing DIY projects deliberately when Emily was at home.
It's so noisy.
Against Emily's complaints, I held my ground.
Looks like he's making a chair for David right now. When you think of the grandchildren first, you just want to make things for them. Is there anything else that would be good to make?
I smiled warmly at Emily, who glared at me and then retreated to her room. Contrary to Emily, who was accumulating dissatisfaction with daily life, David grew more attached to us day by day.
Robert, I can't stand living in this house anymore.
One evening, I overheard Emily exploding with complaints to Robert.
David seems very happy here. He hasn't caught a cold since we moved in. And aren't all the chores and David's care being taken care of for you? It's about time you change your attitude, or you'll regret it.
Robert warned Emily. After that, Emily's attitude improved slightly when Robert was around. However, Robert often went on business trips. During those times, Emily reverted to her old ways, staying out late and doing as she pleased, completely ignoring Robert's words. 8 months had passed since we started living together. David had finally started elementary school. With the start of elementary school came school lunches. And he began walking to school by himself in the mornings. With no need for lunch preparations or school drop-offs, Mike and I suddenly found ourselves with a lot of free time.
David, what did you do today?
Mike, a former teacher, eagerly helped David with his homework and started taking him to the library.
Grandma, my friend wanted to come over, so I brought them home.
After school, David sometimes brought friends home.
Well, come on in. Wash your hands first. Maybe we can all bake some cookies together.
When this happened, just like when Robert used to bring friends over, we would make sweets together or entertain them with homemade treats if we knew ahead of time.
David's grandpa and grandma are so nice. Right? Grandpa and grandma are always on my side.
David proudly said this when his friends expressed their envy. Those words filled both Mike and me with joy. During dinner one evening, Emily, who usually ate quickly and returned to her room, spoke to David.
David, do you want me to help with your homework? No, Grandpa helps me with my studies.
David's immediate response left Emily looking flabbergasted. And we struggled to hold back our laughter. That day at lunch, David had brought a friend home and had this conversation.
What's your favorite food, David? Hamburgers.
Does your mom make good hamburgers?
No, Grandma makes them. Actually, Grandma makes all our meals.
Really? Emily must have overheard this conversation from her room and realized she was being sidelined.
How about we go out together on your next day off? No, I have plans to play with my friends. We're going to make pasta with Grandma, right?
David looked at me and smiled, so I nodded and smiled back. Seeing us like this, Emily's expression turned visibly displeased.
Aren't you overstepping your bounds, taking my place as his mother?
Emily glared at me. I was dumbfounded by her late complaint, but kept smiling for David's sake.
Didn't you say to put David first? For us, David is a treasure. That's not what I meant.
Emily slammed the table and stood up quickly, retreating to her room with a loud bang. Seeing this, David looked worried.
It's okay. If you want to play with Mom, you can. And if you want to be with Grandpa and Grandma, we're more than happy. We're on your side, David.
I gently patted his head, and he looked relieved. From then on, while David was at school, Emily persistently demanded that we give back David.
We're not taking anything. We're just being grandparents. She doesn't cling to me at all because of you.
That's your issue, isn't it?
You must be saying bad things about me.
Emily avoided mentioning her own behavior, blaming us for David not being close to her.
Robert must feel something is wrong with this situation too.
For some reason, Emily believed Robert would support her. Since Emily refused to listen to us, we decided to discuss the matter when Robert returned from his business trip 2 days later.
Robert, please say something to Mike and Amanda. As soon as Robert returned, Emily ran to him with her complaints. Having been briefed in advance, Robert sighed deeply.
It's your own fault.
Robert coldly rejected Emily. In a surprising turn, Emily then turned to David for sympathy.
David, you like Mom more than Grandpa and Grandma, right?
David walked over to Mike and me and firmly grasped our hands.
Grandpa and Grandma are always with me, they listen to me, and they teach me. I love Grandpa and Grandma a lot.
Hearing David's words, Emily's face twisted.
Are you betraying your mother?
Emily's angry shout echoed in the room, causing David to flinch. To take her anger out on David like that. Mike and I could no longer contain our anger.
Mike, could you take David upstairs?
Mike gently embraced the frightened David and, as I suggested, took him to the second floor for safety. With the living room quiet, I slammed a thick envelope on the table.
What's this? A detective agency?
Hearing detective agency, Emily was taken aback. Without a word, I dumped the contents of the envelope onto the table.
What is this?
Among the spilled contents were photos of Emily holding hands with a man, entering a room together, clearly indicating an affair, along with a report from the investigation. We had been puzzled why, despite Robert's average income, we had to live together. Suspicious of Emily's behavior of neglecting her child and idly enjoying herself since living with us, we had hired a detective agency. To our shock, it turned out Emily was having an affair. Emily, under Robert's glare, looked down and trembled.
You've betrayed our family. I want a divorce right now.
Wait, it's not what it looks like. Emily's pleas were brushed aside by Robert.
What's not to understand? To you, we're just in the way. Go to your lover.
I had never seen Robert so upset. To see my son suffer like this. My anger was unbearable. I'm sorry. I went too far. I won't do it again. Please forgive me. Emily desperately apologized, hoping for forgiveness.
There's no way I can forgive you.
Then I accept the divorce. But I won't give up David. After all this, her audacity was astonishing. I was dumbfounded. You won't get custody, I admonished, and Emily glared at me.
David is my child, born from my own body. I won't hand him over to anyone like you.
Emily's hostility was blatant.
For the past year, we've almost exclusively taken care of David. You've neglected your child and even had an affair. With so much evidence, there's no way you'll get custody. We'll also be seeking compensation for the affair through lawyers. If you have any objections, we're prepared to go to court. Just pack your things and leave immediately.
Thus, Emily was forcibly made to leave our home. After Emily left, Robert sat down, defeated. I'm sorry for hiring a detective agency without telling you. I apologized to Robert while gathering the affair evidence back into the envelope. Mike and I had agonized over whether to tell Robert the truth after discovering the affair. We had hoped Emily might change. But with no signs of change from her and her unjust treatment of her own child, we couldn't forgive her. I'm sorry for the trouble, Mom and Dad. Can we still stay here? Robert apologized with a sense of guilt.
Of course. We'll raise David happily together.
That's when Mike and David came down from upstairs.
Dad, what happened?
David immediately noticed Robert's red eyes.
David, Mom will be living somewhere else now.
David clung tightly to Mike. Poor thing. Hearing the word Mom must have reminded him of being yelled at.
David, we'll always live here together with me, Amanda, and Robert.
Mike reassured David with a firm hug, and David's expression softened slightly. Then, Robert and Emily proceeded with their divorce through their respective lawyers, handling everything calmly. The fact of Emily's affair naturally became known to Emily's parents, Jennifer and Joseph. "We're truly sorry for what Emily has done." Emily's parents flew in to apologize to us in person. Since the day we sent Emily away, we've had no idea where she is or how she's doing.
Is Emily showing any signs of remorse for what happened?
When I asked Jennifer, she gave a shocking reply.
"We don't know where Emily is either. We've disowned her."
Disowned. I could sense the serious resolve in Jennifer and Joseph. Then, David ran over.
"Gramps and Granny! Did you come to visit? David, you've grown so much.
Look, we brought your favorite sweets." They rejoiced at reuniting with David, who was clearly delighted to see his seldom-seen Gramps and Granny. "It's quite a trip to our house, but please continue to visit David in the future." At my words, they looked surprised.
"Is that all right?"
"Of course.
Let's all continue to watch over David together." "Thank you so much."
For Jennifer and Joseph, David was their only grandchild. Despite the distance, their feelings were just like ours. They always cared deeply for David. After Robert and Emily divorced, we kept in regular contact with Jennifer and Joseph, updating them on David's life.
"Gramps, I went dragonfly catching with Grandpa the other day. That sounds fun. Let's go bug hunting together next time."
With Emily gone, peace and tranquility returned to our lives. I recently learned that, sometime after the divorce, Emily had reached out to Robert several times.
"Emily asked if we could get back together."
Apparently, Emily was quickly abandoned by her affair partner and found herself alone. Having never really worked and lived carelessly, she couldn't find the motivation to work and quickly ran through her savings. That's when she approached Robert about getting back together. When Robert refused, she then asked for financial support. People don't change that easily. I felt nothing towards Emily anymore.
"Does she still contact you occasionally?"
I was concerned. No. Every time she contacted me, I'd send back those affair photos without a word. She gave up after that. Hearing that, I felt relieved.
"Thanks for everything, Mom. Good night."
Perhaps out of embarrassment, Robert quickly retreated to his room after those words. His brief thanks carried a lot of meaning.
"Thank you, too, for the lively days,"
I murmured softly. A year later, with David now in second grade and having started playing soccer 6 months ago, he was thoroughly engrossed in it. After school, he would sweat it out at soccer club practice and then come home to watch international soccer matches with Mike, who enjoyed soccer as a hobby. On days off, Robert and David would play soccer video games together.
"Grandpa, want to try the game?" "No, I can't handle such complicated stuff." "It's not hard. Come on, let's play together,"
Mike said, sitting between David and Robert. Watching the three of them seated on the sofa from behind, I couldn't help but smile. The atmosphere was filled with peace and happiness. I hoped we could continue to cherish these simple, everyday moments across 3 generations.
"Come on, lunch is ready. It'll get cold if you don't hurry."
At my call, the 3 hungry boys turned around.
"Haha, you all have the same look on your faces."
We all looked at each other and laughed.